Good morning. Good morning to all of you. My name is Cynthia Stead, and I'm the Executive Director of Sight Loss Services. I'd like to welcome you all here today and thank the other sponsors of this Smart Sight Summit, the Cape Cod Hospital and the Red Jacket Resort that provided accommodations for all of the speakers. I'd also like to thank the Dennis Harwich Lions and the Barnstable Yarmouth Lions. They are here today to act as guides for your help. If during the presentations you find that you want to leave your seat or you need to ask a question, please raise your hand. The Lions will be in the back of the auditorium and they can offer you an arm to get to wherever you want to go and help you otherwise. Now, I have a question I'd like to ask of all of you. Would all of you here with macular degeneration please raise your hands? You don't look blind. How many times have you had to hear that? People often assume that legally blind is totally blind. And as we all know, they think that you get all the help you need from the Mass Commission. But the truth is that most people have visual impairment, but they do not qualify for the Commission help because they are not yet legally blind, which is a standard of 2200 with corrected vision. The Mass Commission is great, but it's a federal law, and if your vision is 2187, there isn't any help available. One of the reasons that we at Sight Loss invited the Macula Vision Research Foundation here today is because the Cape Cod area is one of the fastest growing regions in the state for visual impairment, largely due to our older and aging population, since most eye diseases are in fact diseases of age. There really aren't any hard numbers as to how many people on Cape have severe vision loss. It is reliably estimated that for every person who has been declared legally blind, there are at least 2 or 3 others that do have severe vision loss, but only the legally blind get counted. There are 2,300 legally blind people on Cape Cod, which is about the population of Truro. But if you add the likely 7,000 people with severe vision loss, you have about 9,000 people who are struggling every day, which is much more like the population of Brewster. And it's estimated by the year 2020, there will be more people with macular degeneration than all forms of cancer combined. But everybody here thinks they're the only one. Every day, somebody comes to the agency and says, I have this odd disease that no one has ever heard of. It's called macular degeneration. Simple things become terrible major chores. A realtor can't see an MLS listing anymore. A person that wants to make dinner can't set the time on the stove because they're afraid to turn on the stove plate, and all of the microwaves are black with silver buttons and you can't read that either. Some problems can be aided by advances in technology and adaptive aids, but what gets to be really devastating is the loss and the loneliness and the darkness as blindness sets in. When simple things do become a chore, it gets easier to remain at home instead of going out, wondering if you're being looked at with pity. Anyone who has ever tried to live on Cape Cod knows that the isolation is just crushing if you don't have a car. Often, people who have been the most successful in their earlier lives have the greatest difficulty adapting to something like macular degeneration. For some of them, it is the first thing they've ever run up against that they can't work or plan or negotiate their way out of, because it is an incurable disease. Vision will never really return. The best that they can hope is to try to preserve what they have left and forestall further loss. Some people have had their doctors say to them, there really isn't anything I can do for you anymore. So what can you do for yourself instead? That is what we are trying to offer today. The tools and the information to help yourself learn to live productively and safely with your vision loss. And in doing so, perhaps you can help others as well, who also have this strange disease that no one has ever heard of called macular degeneration. When Sight Loss was founded 30 years ago, a 65-year-old woman with macular was likely married to a World War II vet, had spent her life making a home for her family. She was unlikely to type, and her husband, frankly, never learned how to type at all. We had girls to do that for us. She might be reluctant to experiment with new ideas and adaptive aids because it isn't the kind of machinery that she used in her earlier life. And besides that, in many ways, blindness was a weakness. There were definite ideas about what it was appropriate for a person who had vision loss and blindness to do. Today, that same 65-year-old woman likely did work outside the home and has a greater familiarity with computers and often can outstrip her husband, who also has the disease, who may never have learned how to use one himself. Also, having lived in an era after the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, I think now people are more open about blindness, more likely to challenge stereotypes about what the capabilities of blind people are. Sight loss works to promote that independence and social interaction while trying to foster the emotional and practical peer support that is the center of the agency's focus. We want to adapt to the changing needs of our clients while remaining focused on our core mission. Our philosophy has always been, no one should go through vision loss alone, and Sight Loss Services is here to help. And today, we are helping by inviting Don Prawl-George of the Macula Vision Research Foundation to speak to you about these programs and this disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Great information and a good way to start things going. I echo everything that Cynthia said to all of you except for one thing. I heard the word incurable disease, and I'm here to tell you that we're going to find a cure. How about that? And you're going to hear from a lot of other experts, not me today, but a lot of folks who are in the vision field and research, and also in low vision rehab, and it's just, we're going to present a very comprehensive offering for you today. I am Dawn George. I'm the Executive Director of Macula Vision Research Foundation. I have that honor and privilege, and I want to say thank you to all of you and to Cynthia and her team for hosting us here on the Cape. What a beautiful place. Do you know what a beautiful world you have around you? It's really incredible. We saw the sunset last night, and we don't get to see those too much in Philadelphia. So thank you so much. It really was very special, and our time here has been incredible. I want to start by, I'm not going to do much talking. I'm really the facilitator today, and a couple of housekeeping issues. Please turn your cell phones off if you have them. Okay, we appreciate that. Also, the goal of today are a couple things. We know from people who tell us that you don't get enough time with your doc, you don't get enough time to ask questions, to get answers to, that you need answers to, excuse me. So today is very interactive. So just remember that. It's a conversation really between us and the panel experts and you. Okay, so I'll have two things to ask you. One is, please, when you leave today and go back to your normal lives, think about what you learned today, and we hope that you take away at least one or two things you didn't know before you walked in the door. Okay, so remember that. That's our goal. And the other thing we ask of you is that you will tell everyone you know about us. Does that sound like a deal? Pretty easy, right? Good. I'm going to move forward with our first presenter. And we're very lucky today to have Dr. Gian with us. It's on your agenda, by the way, if you can see it. I know the lighting's a little tough in this room. Dr. Gian is a local retina specialist. He is educated from the University of Tehran with his MD. He was an ophthalmology resident at the University of Rochester at the Eye Institute, and also did a fellowship at New York vitreoretinal surgery. He was at Mass Eye and Ear. I'm sure that organization rings familiar with many of you. And also as a Harvard Medical School certification. He completed a fellowship program in ocular molecular genetics and a fellowship program in ophthalmic pathology at Mass Eye and Ear and Harvard. He's on the Certified American Board of Ophthalmology in 2012. And he's also not only involved in taking care of patients and people like many of you, but he's also involved in research. When I met Dr. Gian for the first time today, I asked him a question about the Cape, because he's not from here, and he loves it. He's been here for 14 years. And I also asked him, why ophthalmology? And his comment to me was, when he was in medical school, he realized that that was the passion that he had and the one way that he felt that he could help the most people. So Dr. Gian's going to come up, and prior to his presentation, we're going to show you a little short video about us, and that'll get things started. Okay? Thank you.
Macular degeneration is slowly robbing the sight of 15 million Americans. By the year 2020, this number is expected to be more than 20 million people. But we see a clearer future. We know a cure is on the horizon. Over the past 20 years, MVRF has given more than $21 million to the top scientists conducting the most credible and promising research around the world. For decades, macular degeneration was a mystery, something that happened to people as a part of aging. Now, because of MVRF-funded research, scientists know the nature of AMD. They are pioneering leading-edge genetic discoveries, plumbing the very depths of this devastating disease. Our work is fueling even more discoveries. Through gene therapy, we are now reversing childhood blindness and continue to make headway in advanced treatment methods for wet and dry AMD. We see macular degeneration going the way of polio and smallpox, a relic of the past, a footnote of history. We believe we're closing in. We're working every day so millions of people can keep their precious vision. It's the reason our founders, the Lotman family, started MVRF, where 100% of every dollar donated goes directly to research in the field. That's a vision we can get used to. That's a world we can believe in, because believing is seeing. MVRF is a 501c3 public charity, and we rely on support from believers like you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's my utmost pleasure to be here with you fine folks to talk about macular degeneration. Thank you, Don, for a nice intro. So today, basically, we're going to talk about macular degeneration. First of all, some of these terminology about macular degeneration. So degeneration is basically when a tissue in your body start to lose its function. We call it degeneration. It's a progressive condition. It's something that gets damaged and progressively gets worse. That's why it's called macular degeneration. We talked about the prevalence. It's very common among elderly. It's about 1.47% of the population. Right now, about 1.75 million Americans. And as you just heard, the rate is increasing. The prevalence of AMD increases dramatically with age. As we get older, we are more prone to develop and be affected by macular degeneration. As you just heard, by year 2020, the number is going to increase, and we're going to have more people involved with macular degeneration. This is a quick slide about the anatomy of the eye. I just wanted to review everything. This is the picture of the retina, what we see inside the eye. If you imagine eye is like a basketball, inside of it, it looks like this. The round yellow thing is the optic nerve, and everything in the middle of the white circle is called macula. That is 93% of your vision. Whenever you see it, whenever you look at somebody's face, you're using that part. When you read a text, you're using that part. When you're watching a TV, you're watching a movie in a theater, you're using that part. And that is the part that is involved in macular degeneration. The definition of macular degeneration is very simple. By examination, you can, every time you can distinguish it. You have heard of it from your doctors, you have heard of it from news, in a newspaper. It's a drusen, pigmentation in the back of the eye changes, and sometimes you get bleeding. Very simply, these are macular degeneration. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more later on. When we talk about drusen, the picture on the left side, it's a normal retina and normal macula. Everything looks very good, shiny, nice. And on the right side, you see those yellowish, whitish dots. Those are drusen. Those are basically, the drusen is just waste material that your retina is not able to handle anymore. And it's accumulated under the retina. It damages the photoreceptors, those cells that are responsible for vision. There are simply two types of macular degeneration: the dry form of macular degeneration and the wet form of macular degeneration. The dry form is more common. 90% of people who have macular degeneration are in the dry form, and 10% they have the wet form. The reason it's called wet is because bleeding happens, and that simply is called wet. The dry form is characterized by the drusen and pigmentary changes, and it usually starts very mild, and you have, or a patient has, very minor vision changes at the beginning. They have difficulty reading fine prints, they have difficulty focusing on the small prints, and later on it gets worse, and you have a blur spot or gray spot dead center of your vision. That is called the dry, and usually takes years and years to affect your vision in a significant way. And this is a typical picture that when we examine a patient with dry macular degeneration, we usually see. We see this whitish material, yellowish material, which is drusen, some pigmentary changes, and that signifies a loss of photoreceptors, which is the most important cell in the retina. The wet macular degeneration is a transformation that happens in some patients with dry, which a layer of a retina becomes so weakened that abnormal blood vessels start to grow underneath of a retina. These abnormal blood vessels are extremely fragile, and they can break and bleed, and that blood and fluid that comes underneath of the retina can damage the cells, the photoreceptors. And this is the picture of the bleeding. As you see in the center, there is bleeding underneath the retina. That part of the retina is affected by a bad blood vessel, which is called neovascularization, and the bleeding damages the photoreceptors. If it's left untreated, it dramatically changes the vision and causes loss of central vision. Fact about macular degeneration: age-related macular degeneration accounts for almost 50% of those registered as a blind or partially sighted. Effective treatment is available at this point for wet form of macular degeneration. Early recognition and prevention is the key. What are the risk factors for macular degeneration? Obviously, it's called age-related macular degeneration. So age is a big part. As we get older, we get more prone, more likely to get macular degeneration. Genetic. We all heard of genetic conditions. This is a different form of genetic problem. It's multifactorial, meaning that just not one single gene is responsible for this disease. So if you have it, you get it. If you don't have it, you're lucky you don't. There are multiple genes, combination of genes, that they work together to cause different manifestation of these genes, from mild to severe. And so many of them known by now, and researchers are working on it to see the effect of these genes on the treatment, prognosis, so on and so forth. As obvious, environmental factor also important in manifestation and cause a risk factor for macular degeneration. The only known environmental factor so far is smoking. Smoking has caused, and it's not unknown to anybody, it can cause a lot of problem in our cardiovascular system. We know it. Macular degeneration is another one. For example, in women, history with smoking, it would increase the likelihood of developing macular degeneration by 2.5 points. And in men, it's even higher, 3.2. Nutrition is really important. Is another environmental factor can affect developing and risk of macular degeneration, meaning that if you have good habits and good diet, the risk would come down, and if you don't, the risk would go up. Vitamins E, A, C, zinc, and elements like zinc, copper, these are good nutrition elements that would help. Lutein, zeaxanthin, these are all in vegetables, green leafy vegetables, fruit. You can find them if you eat plenty of them. You always get chock full of all these vitamins and elements that help to reduce the risk of developing AMD, or macular degeneration. This is a mild form of macular degeneration. This person doesn't know even have it unless sees an eye doctor and tell, oh, you have macular degeneration. It's very mild. The patient says, I don't have any problem, doc, but you have it. This is a good time to intervene and start to change your habits. If you smoke, stop smoking. If you make sure that you incorporate the dietary modification I just talked about. This is a very advanced form. At this point, patients have very bad vision. This is the bleeding type. At this point, immediate treatment is necessary to stop and stabilize the vision. And this is obviously a bad form. By this time, there's not much we can do. This is what usually I present to the people who are not involved with macular degeneration. You all know what macular degeneration can do to your vision. On the left-hand side is the vision that it's the picture that we all see, and people who have macular degeneration, usually dead center of the vision, they have difficulty. This is an absolute grid, but they always give it to you in an eye exam when you come for your eye exam, and you see the distortion. That is the first sign of macular degeneration. When you see it, first of all, you have to screen yourself every day. And when you notice a change, always call. I always say to my patient, I'd be happy you come here and it's a false alarm. Then you come and it's too late. Treatment. For now, we still don't have an effective treatment for dry macular degeneration. But if you remember, I said this is a slowly progressive condition. So fortunately, it still takes years and years to cause any meaningful loss of vision. And I'm going to talk a little bit about prevention with dry macular degeneration in a second. These are pictures of eyes involved with dry form of macular degeneration. And this is a very advanced form of it. As I mentioned in the nutrition part about some vitamins and some elements that would help to prevent and bring down the risk of macular degeneration. These are vitamins that they come, I put the commercial forms on the slide. They all have vitamin E, vitamin C, zinc, copper, lutein, which is most important, zeaxanthin, and if you take it based on whatever it says on the bottle, national study has shown, AREDS 1 and AREDS 2, that's shown that it can help to stop the progression of macular degeneration by 25%. That is a very big number. By 25%, it would decrease the rate of progression. And by 19%, would decrease the transformation to the bleeding type. So to take these vitamins, these are very helpful. And at this point, for now, this is the only thing that we have. What are the dosage in this formulation? They all have, there are vitamin C, as I said, and vitamin E. There are two formulations, probably you all heard of it. There are one of them that have vitamin A and one of them don't have vitamin A. For now, I just recommend for everybody a non-vitamin A formulation, the one that doesn't have vitamin A, because AREDS number 2 actually proved that lutein can help a lot. So in the past, we were talking about smokers, non-smokers. People were smokers or farmer smokers. We didn't want them to take vitamin A, but now it's just one formulation, non-vitamin A with the lutein. That's the most important one. Who should take the AREDS formula, these vitamins? Anybody who has macular degeneration, mild or severe, should take these medications. The question that I get asked a lot, can I take a daily multivitamin if I'm taking the AREDS formulation? Absolutely. The daily multivitamin has different stuff, and AREDS has different stuff. And if you get, like for example, it's vitamin C, it's not to the level that hurts you. And another question, can a daily multivitamin alone provide the same high levels of antioxidant and zinc as the AREDS formula? No. Although I have seen it in the market, there are some 50 plus multivitamins that they incorporated it, but those are usually fine prints and hard to see. I would say take the regular multivitamin and take the AREDS, and you'll be all set. Will taking the AREDS formulation prevents me from developing AMD? So, this is a question that I get most of the time from a sibling or like offspring of somebody who is in the office says, oh, my mom had or my dad has macular degeneration. Should I take these vitamins to prevent getting it? Well, there is no study to support it, so I would say no. However, at the same breath, I would tell them, just eat healthy, a healthy diet with green leafy vegetables, fish oil, lots of fruits and vegetables, you'll be all set. And I just talked about this one. I'm just going to quickly talk about the beta-carotene and vitamin A. We know that in the smoker, there are reports that can increase the lung cancer. That's why we don't recommend that anymore. And just lutein-based formula, that is all you need to take. So now we get to the vet form of macular degeneration. As we talked about it, you get some abnormal blood vessels, fragile, they can bleed under the retina, damage the retina. And we can detect it in multiple ways. The previous picture was fluorescein angiography pictures, and this one is an OCT, which is a scan from the eye, and we can detect it now, and we see it on exam like the bleeding like this. The treatment available at this point, standard of the care for wet form of macular degeneration, is intravitreal injection of medication on a monthly basis to stop the bleeding. These are very, very important steps. The medication is very successful in terms of stabilizing the vision. 90% of the time would help to stabilize the vision. Let's say you get a bleeding, your vision is 20/40, you come to the doctor, you get the injection on a timely fashion, your vision is 90% stay at 20/40, which is a good number. The old treatments, lasers, we don't do that anymore. There are different medications on the market, Lucentis, Avastin, Eylea. All this study have pointed that these medications are as equal as in terms of efficacy, side effect profile. The reason we use it is just like we use every other medication. They're all effective, and those numbers that I said applies to all of them. The treatments come different regimen for every single medication, but most of them are on a monthly basis, and you have to do a series of treatment to stabilize, stop the bleeding, stabilize the vision, and help the vision. These are the way that the injection is done. It's an office procedure, very nicely tolerated, and most people do fine. So, summary, we know that AMD is the leading cause of legal blindness in the United States, and that is a big problem, but the good news is a lot of people are working on it, as you see it today. A lot of people are working on it, so help is on the way. Early detection, regular eye examination is the key. Despite debilitating nature of macular degeneration, with ancillary helps, many of sufferers of AMD manage to live independent and fulfilling lives. Treatment would help to slow down and stabilize the vision. Thank you.
Did you all hear that? Dr. Gian said help is on the way. That's exactly what we want to have you tell everyone you know. And thank you, Dr. Jihan, for that information. And he's going to be part of our panel a little later on, and that'll give all of you a chance to ask questions. Okay, sound good? Thank you again, Dr. Jihan. Help is on the way. That's what I like to hear. All right, time to move on to the next presenter. We're very lucky to have Terry Swift join us today. And Terry is co-founder of Tyrogenics, and she's going to tell you more about them in a minute or two. But Terry is, the company is currently developing an oral treatment for wet AMD. Okay? Again, hope is on the way, folks. That seems to be a common theme. How many of you have wet AMD? You know for sure. Okay. So, Terry got involved in this journey because, as many of us know, it's a personal situation or a personal experience. Her mother had AMD and it changed her life. Active in philanthropy, Terry is a trustee of the Foundation Fighting for Blindness. They also work in this same field. Many may recognize that name. She's a recipient of the 2013 Visionary Award from them and a member of the Leadership Council of Concordia, an organization promoting public-private partnerships around the world. She aids the scientific team in finding therapies for different medical conditions by communicating with patients, health industry leaders, and investors, because we all know it takes money, right? She is instrumental in providing the necessary connections for Tyrogenics as it moves forward with its clinical trials for wet AMD, and they also are in oncology as well. Terry holds a BFA from Parsons School of Design, and one of the other very interesting things about Terry that I'm sure many of you might not know is that she was an alternate for the Grand Prix equestrian team for the Munich Olympics. How about that? So without further ado, Terry, you're on deck.
Good morning, everybody. I want to thank Dawn and Cynthia and the team, and I'm here to give you a little bit of a different perspective about macular degeneration and how, from a biotech company, we have a little bit of a different perspective, but like anything else, it's all about networking. It's about working together. It's about finding groups like the Macula Vision Foundation, where you can, with Macula Vision, they are supporting the scientists, and that's where it all starts. And that's how we started. So today we're going to talk about wet AMD. What is wet AMD? We already covered that pretty much. And also then I'm going to talk about who are we, this little small biotech company of 10 people coming from Florida. But fortunately we have now also opened an office in Needham. So everybody's got to be from Boston if you have a biotech company. And I'm also going to talk about clinical trials, because a big deal for a small biotech company is when you're starting with just a molecule to get to actual human clinical trials, the odds are immensely against you. We are currently in phase 2, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. So as we learned, wet AMD is one of the leading causes of blindness. The macula is damaged by the edema, and then there is the bleeding, which affects central vision. That's what it looks like. The red dot is where the blood leakage. I think you got some pretty good pictures from before. So the current landscape, monthly injections. It's a treatment burden. It's great that we have it. As Dawn mentioned, my mother had it, and that was back in the days where there really wasn't much one could do. So the fact that there are the injections, they're well tolerated, but they're a hassle. And it's a burden that they're monthly. And with the increased population, it's a problem for the doctors. You're going to get crowded space, and it's hard to keep up with it. What we are attempting to do is to extend the time between injections, and also along the way, hopefully improve vision. The other thing is, with having a pill, what we're hoping to do is, because you're taking a systemic pill, that it will save the other eye from converting. Because you'd never inject a healthy eye, but if you're taking a pill, hopefully it will stop the blood vessels. I'll talk about how all that works from our scientific perspective. There are companies out there. It is a hot area of biotech, from the venture capital, from the stock market, from all aspects. It's a popular area because there are so many of you out there with the disease. We did choose the oral. The map is showing where our clinical trials are taking place. We have 35 sites, and Dawn and her team are helping identify patients and helping people find the bridge on how to find us as we go forward. So as we all know, it takes science, business, money, and teamwork. A little bit about our team. We have a new CEO that we're very happy to have. His name is Mike Webb. He lives up here in Boston. Comes to the Cape quite often. He was with Allegro Diagnostics, Anchor Therapeutics. He's helped raise more than $350 million in public and private equity, and he is aggressively helping us move forward. The key to our company is a fellow named Chris Liang, who approached us. He's from Scripps Research, and he had worked in the private sector before he found us. He came to Florida. We didn't live in Florida either. He came to Florida because of Scripps and initiatives started by Jeb Bush to bring biotech to various states and initiatives. And he came in and he developed a drug called Sutent for kidney cancer. And he came and approached us from the business side and said, I think I can take out some of the toxicity of this drug. I think I can get rid of a lot of the side effects. So we started what was then an oncology company. The next one is me, and the last person is Dennis O'Shaughnessy. He runs our clinical trials. He's worked with Roche, iTech, and Orion. And Orion is a company based in Europe. It's actually a radiation company where you get one beam of radiation to stop the bleeding and treat macular degeneration. It's not looked upon as friendly in the US, but it's doing quite well in Europe. So there are things all around us. There's also, on our board of directors, there's a fellow developing an eye drop. Our scientific advisory team is Dr. Phil Rosenfeld, professor of ophthalmology down at Bascom Palmer. We have Dr. Jason Slachter, he's in New York, from the Vitreous Macula Consultants. Glenn Stoller, board-certified ophthalmologist, and Jeff Heyer, who is up in Boston at Mass Eye and Ear. He's been with us since the beginning. Okay, so as I was saying in the beginning, we started in 2007, never a quick journey in these things. We decided to help develop a drug that would be tolerated by more. And it's been working. We have actually patients who have been on our cancer therapy for over 3 years in our phase 1 treatment. So they've tolerated it and they've also survived because we're talking about cancer there. We were approached at another meeting and someone said, you know, what your drug is made of is the same as has some of the components of Avastin and Lucentis and Eylea, and another part, which is another drug in development. So at this meeting, you know, there's 6 of us in our company, and because of my mom, I decided I would take on putting the pieces together to start the ophthalmology company, which is now how we've gotten here today. So with no resource, these things develop through serendipity and just a passion to get it done and address a problem. Here's what our drug is. It's an oral VEGF PDGFF. It's the same, the VEGF is what Lucentis and Avastin and Eylea all are. The PDGF is an interesting component. I'm just going to run through it briefly. As you heard, I went to Parsons School of Design, so I'm not a scientist either. The PDGF, when the blood vessels are leaking, this is a part to control that, but also the body's pretty smart, and what the body does is it forms new blood vessels. So this helps, this is the growth factor that stops the new ones. So that's why it works in cancer. Basically, we're starving the tumor. You apply it to ophthalmology in the back of the eye, it stops the new blood vessels from leaking, hopefully. That's the dream. That's what it looks like from the scientific part of the vessels. It's like a riverbank. I'm not going to get into that too much. So why a pill? As I said, as we know, the dry often converts to the wet, and the pill will hopefully prevent that process from occurring and save that second eye is our dream and our hope. And also the hope that people will have at least 50% fewer injections. Here's where we are right now. We've completed our phase 1 clinical trial. We treated 35 patients. The majority maintained their vision with very few injections during our 6-month study. 60% who completed in the 6 months had no injections while they were on study. The OCTs, which are the pictures, are significantly reduced in 7 out of 9 on the highest doses. And the patients who completed the 6-month treatment had an average improvement in vision, one line on the chart, of +5 letters. We weren't expecting the vision improvement. That was pretty exciting. We had, that was pretty nice because a lot of people had up to like 40 or 50 injections, and so that's how you get into a phase 1. Here is one of the samples. The bump is the bad thing that happens and occurs in the pictures. That's what the docs don't like to see. And that's after 6 months of treatment, how it flattened out. So that's an important thing. Those are the things that keep us moving on and keep us going. We have now in March begun a phase 2 trial in 35 sites. It's a randomized, double-masked, placebo-controlled study. We also have 5 in the UK, and we are currently enrolling, and we need 132 patients. It's a year-long study. One of the things with the study is people are like, well, what happens if I'm just taking this pill? Well, you are never off your pill. You're still, if you need an injection, you will get the injection, you will get treatment. So that's the whole point. So the only thing it will improve is you might not need very many injections of any. So that's the hope. The other part about it that's difficult is how do I get into these trials? And the patient population will be previously treated who have the ability to achieve a 90% reduction in fluid in response to Eylea. The reason for that is when there's only 130 people, you need to get the people who are going to be most responsive, because we're not a huge company, so we have a small study, so we need to make it as successful as possible. So it makes the criteria a little bit harder, but the people who qualify, I think, will get rewarded, hopefully. The endpoint will be to show that we can maintain vision with fewer injections. And we hope to be able to demonstrate that we can reduce by 50% or eliminate in a proportion of the patients. So if you want to know more about us, I do have some business cards, but the best way is to talk to Dawn and her team. They're ready to help in any way about our clinical trial. Our webpage is of Tyrogenics, and I just want to thank everybody for coming and help us find the dream. Thank you.
Hope is on the way and find the dream. I'm loving this, right? That was good stuff, don't you think? Yeah? Thank you, Terry. And thank you, Tyrogenics, for what you're doing to help millions of people. And like Terry said, I just want to reiterate that we are collaborating with them because we are a national organization. We fund research internationally, and we give money to the top retina scientists all over the world. But we do have a national footprint, as you saw in the short little video. And so we're helping Tyrogenics to spread the word. And we also at MVRF really believe very strongly that the way to developing new treatments and eventually a cure is to get people like all of you involved in the trials. I was talking to somebody out by the registration desk before we got started today, and she shared with me that she was in a trial, not this one of course, another one, and it actually was very effective. So that is something that you can do because you heard from Dr. Gian. Macular degeneration is genetic. Now you don't always have it in your family and then get it. But if you have it in your family, chances are very high. The risk is higher. So the way you can help your grandchildren, your children, and future generations is to get involved in these trials and make that commitment. Because as you heard from Terry, and we underscore it, we need the right people involved, and the research needs that in order to get it to more and more people and make it work.